I'm still believing us, 'cause I put my arms around you and what I felt was Hey, good evening. Welcome to RomingerRadio. This is Carl, your host. As you know, we'll talk about anything and everything you guys want to call and talk about. 717-916-5189. So if you have an opine on something and you want to call in and tell us, maybe you want to talk about what's going on in St. Louis. Oh, some police officer shot some guy, so I'm going to loot this store because we had a candlelight vigil. Want to talk about that? We're happy to talk about that. Getting upset and having a rally and violence breaking out is one thing, but deciding you need to loot some stores because you're in such grievance against the police, kind of reminds me of a movie by Spike Lee, Do the Right Thing, right? Got to watch out for those Korean grocers. Yeah. Oh, I'm such a racist. In all seriousness, though, really, is there any justification for that kind of looting? Absolutely not. I thought looters were shot on sight, but in America. Well, not yet. After the Ebolizes the entire nation, we may begin shooting looters on sight. We may yet start doing that, if the Ebola gets prominent enough, sufficiently spread throughout our society. And by the way, I also want to just note some of a sad turn of events. Robin Williams succumbed to depression, proving once again that no matter what you have materially, no matter what you have in life, depression is a disease, and it's hard for people who don't struggle with it to understand it. I don't think I struggle with it. I don't think I have a problem with depression. I was a little depressed. I got some stuff going on in my life that probably got me down a little bit. But I think that was just an appropriate reaction to the circumstance I put myself in. Depression itself, when it catches hold of an individual, is not logical. You're rich, you're wealthy, you have beautiful women throwing their naked bodies at you. Now, this isn't my fantasy. My fantasy, I'm sorry. I was talking about Robin Williams. You're rich, you're successful, you are having a great run of things. Everybody loves you, seemingly. OJ comes to mind. Everybody loved him before he had his little problem. But depression doesn't allow him to see that or appreciate that. Also, celebrities give up privacy. They have their own set of problems. What they've traded for wealth and fame is the right to quiet enjoyment of their own private life. But that said, hey, they did it knowingly. Eyes wide open, right? Or Stanley Kubrick would say, eyes wide shut. That's a good movie, too, if you get back to my topic from earlier. Tom Cruise is in that movie. There's a nutbag. Anyhow, back to Robin Williams for a minute. Robin obviously succumbed to depression without really realizing where he was at, but that's the point. It's a disease that isn't logical. And so if you do know somebody suffering from depression, do what you can to help them. Do what you can to cheer them up. Do what you can to make them feel better. But make sure they get professional help, because the reality is it's not logical. You can't just talk to a depressed guy and tell him how good he's really got it. It doesn't work. It's like an anorexic. It doesn't matter what you tell her, and I'll say her because most anorexics are female. It doesn't matter what you tell her. It doesn't matter what you show her. It doesn't matter whether she agrees with you at the moment or not. When that poor, wretched girl goes and looks in the mirror, she just sees this hideous, horrible person, which in fact she should see a hideous, horrible person, because she's now emaciated herself beyond belief. She's got Laguna hair coming off the back of her neck. But what she sees is it's like a Shallow Hal situation. She just sees this large, obese, could be skinnier, and you can't reason with them. And it's the same thing with depression. Anorexia sometimes may be easier to understand because you can look at the person and realize that they're completely detached from reality. You look at them and you realize when they say that at 83 pounds they are fat and a blob and obese and a whale and blah, 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 blubber. You can look at them and say, okay, I see that this person is pathological. I see that this person is delusional. I understand that they have a disease of the mind. Depressed people, not so much, because even healthy people have moments when they can logically and rightly say, I'm sad, I'm upset, I'm not where I want to be in life, this sucks, I don't know what to do, it's overwhelming, I'm going to pull the covers over my head, I'm going to set an alarm back, it's a gray day, I'm not going out of the house, pull a Tony Soprano and sleep in all day. Well, you because that can happen to anybody, or because a touch of depression is normal, you can't look at a depressed person and listen to them and understand them completely, nor can you reason with them and tell them what they have. So I just think Robin Williams highlights that situation, just proving the point once again that how people, and of course he's so jovial, right, as we knew him, and in public, in his public persona, was a jovial, funny guy, and that goes to my theory about artists being always on the verge of going insane anyhow. But that's a speech for another day, or something we should talk about on another show. The angst of the artist, the burden of the artist. 717-916-5189. They're talking about beginning to shut down borders and creating cordons in the Ebola crisis. That's the idea of, locking people into their local area. You shall not bring your disease to my town. That was used in the Middle Ages. By the way, tonight's show is brought to you in part by Modelo Especial 1925. It's a cerveza. I put a lime in it. Tasty beer. I used it to wash down my dinner, and now I'm just using it to keep my palate flexible during the radio show. Of course, let's not leave out One Wipe Charlie either. I mean, you can't get much done without One Wipe Charlies, I'll tell you that. 717-916-5189. Curious to see what you guys think's going on. Of course, remember we talked about the sprint car racer the other day. I guess the Outlaws are going to be in my local area here shortly. I may have to go see it. I'm wondering how much ticket sales will go up as a result of this death. It's always an interesting idea. Of course, I'm talking about Tony Stewart and the NASCAR dirt track connection, which, of course, is not properly NASCAR. What else do we know? Oh, there's a nationwide trucker shortage, by the way. And this is for all you, armchair investors, stock club members, gold hoarding talk radio listeners. Gold, get your gold now. Get your gold. I can't tell you that gold's a good investment for you, but I would suggest you buy some. What radio host do I sound like? Probably 3/4 of all of them on talk radio. Every time gold takes a spike, the gold ads come out. Well, gold's a risky investment. Hey, did you hear silver? Silver's going to go up 40 times. Well, maybe. We're going to sell it to you, by the way. Okay. Anyhow, long story short, getting back to where I was. trucking shortage is an interesting phenomenon. It means things are moving. You know, goods move on trucks, freight moves on trucks, things move on trucks. When things move, it means the economy is doing something. And we had a few lean years here, and maybe people didn't invest in their fleets, et cetera, but the total number of registered trucks is going up. So keep your eye on it. Truck sales are up every month this year, well over. July was 70% over the year before. Phenomenal. A lot of companies are releasing data suggesting that trucker wages are going up. What does this mean? This means the economy on the back end is burgeoning with stuff. I think that means we've got a good couple of years coming. Hopefully it holds. But the suggestion is that it is going to be going north. And efficiencies have increased. And, of course, as efficiencies of energy, for instance, increase, and I'm not talking about the energy that runs trucks per se, but I'm just talking about the efficiency in product creation and movement have been increased by, for instance, like the Marcellus Shale. We can make more stuff with less money. If we can make more stuff with less money, we still need to move more stuff. And that may explain the pinch in the trucking realm. So, for that or what it's worth, for those of you who are armchair economists, those of you who play with your stock clubs or whatever, just look at new truck sales, trailer sales, new truck registrations, average trucker wages. Start reading some of the quarterly letters from some of the giant carriers. They're already warning their stockholders that wage increases are pending for the driver resource. So, for what it's worth, and if you do make $1 million with that stock tip, buy IBM, right? Yeah, my stock tip of the day is to travel back in time 25 years and buy, well, not even 25 years, just go back and buy some Google, or really some Apple, or some in clone or clone, and then you and Martha Stewart can get together and discuss how it was doing. What else I want to talk to you guys about today? Well, I guess I brought it up at the beginning, and I'm serious about this. I want to know what you guys think. I want to keep knowing what you guys know about the Ebola. Of course, I'm always interested in what you guys think about the Tony Stewart thing, because I think that's still a live topic. But the St. Louis area, what's going on out there? It seems like civil unrest and civil disobedience have lost their luster, or lost. The people who are participating in the civil unrest no longer have the presence of mind to understand why they're doing what they're doing and to do so with a purpose. And so, for instance, the civil unrest of the 60s, for instance, things led by Dr. King, nonviolent civil unrest, nonviolent sit-ins, nonviolent, just we're going to do what we're going to do to protest the law. We're not happy. We're going to revolt at a certain level. Now, throughout human history, some of these things have been considered treason. In fact, some of my wacky right-wing friends who are listening right now, I know are thinking like, well, every time you do something like that, civil disobedience, it's really an act of treason. And you should be shot on sight for sedition. Yeah, okay. And you voted for Sarah Palin, too, I'm pretty sure. That in mind, civil unrest, civil disobedience, the idea was we are going to send a message that something is unjust or wrong. But two wrongs don't make a right. So to the extent that we do a sit-in, we will minimize. To the extent we protest or refuse to obey a law, we'll still minimize violence and harm to others or harm to property. And that movement was very thoughtful in that way and very credible in that way. This civil unrest, which is really what it is, not civil disobedience, in Missouri, in St. Louis, is totally and absolutely uncalled for, unnecessary, and inappropriate. It is crime for the sake of crime. It is, I'm excited, I'm upset, I'm angry, and I'm just going to do what I want to do to who I want to do it to, regardless. It's not good. It's not healthy, and it tells us that the people who are participating in these protests, and it's not every one of them, it's not all the people participating in the protest. I'm sure there's many non-violent members of the protest group, but nonetheless, they are tolerating, allowing, or attracting this element. And it wasn't done historically in these kinds of situations. So, I don't know. If you have a thought on what's going on, why do we turn to violence? And when I say we, I guess I use that term loosely because I don't think it's you and I who turn to violence in these situations. And it's not necessarily a black-white racial issue either. There's bad behavior by both races in these situations. But what's really going on out there? What justifies that? Nothing. I think hoodlums are attracted to these kinds of events because they recognize it creates an easy cover for them to carry out and do what it is hoodlums do, which is break the law. At least I think that's what's going on here. I don't have definitive proof of that. I just have an inkling from what I've read. I guess it was Michael Brown, an 18-year-old unarmed teenager. He's killed by Missouri police on Saturday, so it hasn't been that long, right? Hasn't been that long. So, what's going on? I mean, what's the issue? I guess the population is demanding justice. Demanding justice. What does that mean? Demanding justice. Justice is a slow process. It happened on Saturday, and you're out on Monday demanding justice. Now, on the other hand, and I think it's important, some of you guys are going to make fun of me, but late as the 1980s, Florida, I think 1984, 85, Florida was still deciding custody cases on the basis of race. You know, some terrible white woman took up with a black man, and that meant that she shouldn't have custody of her kids because, you know, she was exposing them to those people. Okay? That's my lifetime, kids. I was 11 or 12 when the United States Supreme Court said finally to the states, you may not use race as a factor in custody cases. You may not use race as a factor in custody cases. So how long ago was that? 20, 30 years ago. 30, it's ancient history, Carl. Well, it is ancient history in a way, but if you're 50 or older, you remember the remnants of Jim Crow and the remnants of actual codified racial decisions. Hell, if you're homosexual, it's still sodomy, it's still a crime in one or two states, right? So my point is I can say why demand justice? Well, of course, we also know that in that same area, 92% of all the searches and 86% of all the vehicular stops by the Ferguson Police Department were on blacks, yet they only make up 70% of the population. So could you feel, contextualizing your place in history and in living memory, and contextualizing yourself in your experience, could you believe that it's possible that, and keep in mind it was an unarmed black man who was shot, could you come to a conclusion that justice is going to be swept under the rug? You know, it happens around here. What am I talking about? It's like the grand jury process. We'll get a police-involved shooting, and a police officer will shot somebody, and a local district attorney will convene or has a standing, like Cumberland County, for instance, has a standing grand jury. They'll bring the grand jury in. They'll have the grand jury members listen to 40-some witnesses, and they'll then declare that the police shooting was justified based on the grand jury investigation. The problem is, we all know district attorneys roughly control grand juries. They pick who gets to sit on them. They pick what evidence is presented to them. And ultimately, even though the grand jury theoretically writes its own presentment, we all know that the district attorney has great sway on that. And then here she comes out and announces that, guess what? The police officer was cleared in the shooting. Oh, yeah, by the way, all the testimony is secret and it's sealed and will never be known to the public. We used to have a process in Pennsylvania, and if you're listening in another state, it wouldn't apply to you, but here in Pennsylvania, we have something called a coroner's inquest. And there, a coroner could look into whether something was a homicide or not, and he could convene a jury, not a grand jury, a coroner's jury. And he can still do this, they just don't do it. Convene a coroner's jury, hold an inquest, and in the inquest, publicly call witnesses, publicly transcribe testimony, and with public oversight, that jury would make an announcement of whether there was justification or no justification. Well, why do district attorneys prefer to not let coroners do the inquest, and why do they prefer to take things in front of a secret grand jury? Because if some witness comes in and says, I don't think the police officer acted appropriately, you'll never hear what that witness has to say, because it'll be sealed as part of the secret grand jury proceedings. On the other hand, even if the coroner's jury comes to a different conclusion than you would have, you've at least heard that witness, so you have a chance to weigh it as a member of the public. And then you know. And then you know. And, of course, if you live in a black community and you magically see that the jury is all white and they're acquitting the police of any wrongdoing, and, of course, it's not a criminal proceeding. It's just a determination of the cause or manner of death. And then that determination is handed over to the district attorney for use. So don't be fooled. Grand jury proceedings are used frequently for district attorneys to build cases and control the outcome and either create unfair scenarios or protect police officers or the like. So don't be fooled. The next time you hear that somebody was cleared of wrongdoing or not cleared of wrongdoing by a grand jury, wonder why did they use a grand jury and not use a more public venue? Well, that's because they can control what you get to learn about. It takes the transparency out of government. By the way, did you see Edward Snowden, talking about transparency in government? Did you see Edward Snowden's ready to come home if we'll just give him a fair trial? Good luck, Ed. You're not getting a fair trial here. I'm telling you that right now. First of all, half of America already rooting against you. And the half that aren't going to be on your jury. Ain't happening. Plus, they're going to declare all the stuff you want to use in your defense to be secret. Ain't going to get an open trial. You're not going to get an open trial. All you did was expose the fact that the NSA was lying to Congress, and the NSA was lying to the Supreme Court, and the administration was lying to the Supreme Court, Republican and Democrat. All you did was show a little light on what's really happening in our government. So you think in that environment you're going to get a fair trial? I mean, there's rumors, right, that the healthcare vote may have been swayed by secret NSA information. I don't think it's true, but I think it's worth talking about. Why did John Roberts change his vote? Why did John Roberts change his vote? Hey, let me ask you guys this one, too. Have you ever thought about this? Do you ever notice when they report the news? Remember, courts are supposed to be... I'm so cynical about my former profession, I know. Did you ever notice that courts are supposed to be neutral and apolitical, and whether they're Republican or Democrats, not supposed to matter because, the judge has no politics? But every news story when they report an appellate decision from the federal courts tells you that it was 2 Reagan appointees and 1 Carter appointee, or it was 2 Republicans and 1 Democrat, or whether they were appointed by Republican or Democrat, and that like 85% of the time, based on how many Democrats or Republicans were on the appellate panel, you can get a pretty good guess as to the exact vote count and how the decision came down. What does that mean? I don't know. Just worth noting. The fact that we report it in our news and that it's considered relevant to know how many Democrats and how many Republicans are on the court is sort of like a de facto wink, wink. Don't be confused about the absolute independence of the judiciary. we wouldn't want you to get confused about that. Caller, you're on the air.
How you doing, Carl?
Hey, Dwayne. What's going on?
Hey, same old. I got a little question for you, and you touched on it here a minute ago about, were you talking about the Obama health care bill getting passed through? And I never heard of the person that you said, but didn't Dennis Kucinich also cave on that vote?
Well, on the vote, in the Supreme Court, John Roberts, there's been some leak a very rare leak from the Supreme Court that suggests that he flip-flopped his position. In other words, they voted and they were going to strike down the health care law. Roberts assigned himself the majority opinion and then came out with the opposite conclusion, much to the surprise of Scalia.
Okay. Well, then I'm thinking about the vote in the House, I guess, when it was getting down to the wire, and they needed one more, and Dennis Kucinich was against it, and I'm hoping I'm remembering this right, and he took a little plane ride with Obama, dude, and next thing you know, he magically votes for it.
Well, right. That's because they either promised him. That's because they either promised him the world, or they showed him some photos of him and a 12-year-old in a picadillo somewhere, and said, "Hey, look what we maintain in our secret files." Welcome to the J. Edgar Hoover on steroids version of government.
Okay, so you're referring to the Supreme Court. Yes,
and of course I'm saying facetiously, although some people have opined that somehow Roberts' switching of his vote may be based on some pressure he felt somehow. And of course, some people think it's just because that's how he truly believes. Some people think, but here's my point. I can say these things and I can speculate about these things because we have such a corrupt and non-transparent intelligence apparatus. We have the IRS targeting conservatives, and we have presidents historically using the IRS on both sides of the aisle against their political opponents. We can now pretty much safely assume that these kinds of shenanigans can happen because there's no transparency. Therefore, we might as well speculate that they are behind the decisions. Why not?
When you were talking earlier, Stephen, about the grand jury and finding a police officer, not accountable, I really didn't know that. You educated me this evening.
Well, good. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and they, I didn't realize that they could. Well, it's like everything else they do. They handpick all the people that's going to run the technically quote legal. What am I trying to say here? The legals of it, and they manipulate everything and then get their result in the end.
Well, exactly.
I made a comment this evening about what happened down in St. Louis. Now, I agree with everything, but let's face the fact: a cop shot an unarmed man standing there with his arms out. I mean, somewhere along the line, that's murder.
Yeah, and
I don't like what resulted. I mean, it was almost like another Rodney King, but nonetheless, that was murder. That was cold-blooded murder. And you still can't you can't ignore that.
Yeah, no, and that's exactly the kind of event. If this guy was shot when he was not a threat, you get these kinds of reactions because there's already some imbalance in the community. And I'm no bleeding heart liberal. I'm no bleeding heart liberal, but I've read stories, and I say stories, but I mean actual accounts of people. And you think like I brought up to Florida using race as a factor as late as the mid '80s in custody cases because it wasn't ancient history. It wasn't 200 years ago that people were slaves. It was 40 years ago that people had overt signs of racism. In the 50s and 60s, there were factories in the North that would have a sign up hiring no blacks. No blacks.
Right.
Just throw that on the sign. Hey, Ted, we're gonna hire.
And then it seems like you heard this story out of St. Louis this week, but it's almost like following the news, it's almost like it happens all over the place all the time.
Well, we've militarized our police.
Anymore.
In fact, look at the picture. Look at the picture that's come out of the police in their gas masks, with their combat uniforms on, their helmets. We don't.
I mean,
we have. To hell with posse comitatus. We're arming our police forces like paramilitary units. We are creating the what you need to create a Stasi, what you need to make the corporal manifestation of an army on the ground. And am I saying that some individual police officers are bad people because they're police officers and they wear? Well, their argument would be, "Hey, I wear this to protect myself. You never know when I might get shot." Yeah, it's called the risk of the job, buddy. But it doesn't mean you should become a paramilitary force and be busting in people's doors, 8 and 10 people deep, to serve warrants. It's a crying shame. I've actually seen this in my former legal career, where they would take 8 or 10 guys, knock in a door, send this whole paramilitary team in because they thought there might be a pound of marijuana in the house. First of all, that's ridiculous. Number two, then they don't find any marijuana, and you're like, all right, so you guys just came in with a whole paramilitary squad into somebody's house, threw a flashbang grenade in the door because you want to play RoboCop. And well, yeah, by the way, there wasn't even any marijuana there. But, hey, you had an affidavit, so it must have been true back in the day, 2 hours before when you were sure it was there. I just have a huge problem with arming the police. And so I do think it's significant, that picture that shows them armed to the gills and body armored and the paraphernalia. What happened to the community police officer?
Right. Well, it's like I said to you the other night on the radio. What happened to the police car saying to protect and serve?
Right.
That went away, and it's all on the same subject. Look at our cops. When I was a kid, cops had uniforms that looked professional, and a lot of times they had color, either gray or blue,
right,
maybe some white shirts, whatever, and they looked professional people. Now they all look like SWAT team members.
Yeah, it's the militarization of the police.
They got so damn much stuff in their belts, I don't know how to keep their pants up.
And the next thing you have is the militarization of the police forces of every agency in government. So now the IRS has its own SWAT team. The DEA has its own SWAT teams. Well, the DEA might be able to make a plausible argument as to why they need their own SWAT teams.
And the ATF and blah, blah, blah. But
why does the IRS need a SWAT team? Right. What is the Department of Agriculture?
Land Management? What about NOAA?
Wait, what do they need SWAT teams for? What do they need them for?
Right. Yeah, well, and now we're back to the Clive and Bundy thing, and the Bureau of Land Management out there, holding automatic weapons on innocent civilians.
Well, and
nobody got shot.
Here's the thing.
But it didn't need to happen.
Here's the thing. There's the old theory about two eyeballs on the problem, okay? So let me ask it this way. What if the FBI maintained SWAT teams and the DEA maintained SWAT teams and maybe the ATF maintained a few SWAT teams, and then other government agencies would come to them and say, hey, we need your assistance, and let me tell you why we need a SWAT team to go into this area. And then that other agency could say, you know what, it doesn't really seem like you need a SWAT team for that, so we're not going to provide our SWAT team. But instead, no, we have to give everybody a SWAT team or a special response team, special response unit, SRU. I'm on the SRU, and we're going to go bust down some doors tonight because that's what we do. And of course, they'll couch everything in officer safety. I always say, whenever you're told it's about crime control or safety, be suspicious. Be suspicious.
Right.
Well,
every time you hear it's for your safety, that's a red flag right there.
Yeah, it's for your own safety. It's for your safety. Right. It's for the safety of the people. It will save children's lives. It will.
Oh my God! They got to definitely throw the children in there.
We'll save. Well, even the governor. even the soon-to-be not governor, Governor Corbett of Pennsylvania, had said when he was justifying the signing of the second largest tax increase in Pennsylvania history, well, just imagine that your kids were on a school bus and they had to go across an unsafe bridge in Pennsylvania. I mean, his very first line when he was interviewed by Ken Matthews on WHP 580, which was not a very cutting interview, by the way. Ken gave him so many softballs. But I just thought it's ironic, right? That was the briefing for the governor. All right. When they ask you why you're signing the largest tax increase as a Republican, mention children. And the only way we can work children into the highway issue is bridges and school buses. And what if a school bus fell off a bridge because we didn't tax the hell out of you people?
And the only reason you use children is because under those circumstances you can't use sex.
Yeah. Right.
It seems like they're the two things that sell, you know.
Well, I try to work as much sex into the show as possible myself.
Well, no problem. But
this is probably cue for Don Stevens to call as soon as I say that. But I was actually going to. My theme for tonight was Ebola, Don Stevens, and Robin Williams. So I touched on Ebola and Robin Williams, but I'm not touching Don Stevens.
No, like I said, it's not really a topic, you know.
It's not really a topic, right? Actually, somebody actually was like, "What's that about?" And I was sort of like, "Well, that's kind of an inside joke for regular listeners."
Right. On Robin Williams, I don't know. You know, you hear everything, see everything, see something like this happens, but they're getting back. Some of these places are getting back on these psychotropic drugs that supposedly all these people were on that do all this weird stuff, the Sandy Hook guy and the Aurora shooting, and now they're claiming that Robin Williams was on these things, and what the problem? I don't know. What's your take on that?
Yeah, the problem with it is if you're batshit crazy, okay, they're going to give you drugs for batshit crazy people, okay, and so. Most of the people on drugs that are for batshit crazy people are batshit crazy. So if the drug doesn't completely do its job, they may just act out or fall off or have a problem. And so it's really tough. There was one where Accutane, which is a drug for acne, and they said, well, kids that are on Accutane have this really high suicide rate. Well, Accutane's prescribed as like a last resort for acne in teenagers who have severe acne. Dermatologist is not supposed to just give you Accutane as the first attempt to clear up your acne. You've got a serious acne problem, and we've tried 8 other modalities of treatment.
This is the last ditch.
This is the last ditch. We're going to put you on it, right? Well,
right.
You take a 16-year-old girl or 16-year-old boy who looks like a pineapple, who's getting the shit teased out of him at school, and they're on Accutane, but their acne's still there, and they just finally give in and kill themselves for it. But Accutane probably didn't contribute to their suicidal ideations. It's just that the subset of human beings who gets prescribed it are a high-risk group. So we like to always think that we know what causes things. And so I think it's very easy to go, well, all of these guys that are killing themselves are on psychotropic drugs. How about this? Maybe we're doing a better job of identifying people who are likely to kill themselves or having serious mental distress. We're getting them help, and one of the help modalities that we get them is psychotropic drugs, but they're still going to commit suicide at a much higher rate than the general population because they were batshit crazy to start with. And that's one very possible explanation. So sorting out what's really the cause,
and maybe he really his whole life, Robin Williams was crazy. I mean, maybe he just had psychiatric problems all his life.
Right,
which was funny.
Which would explain exactly why he was so funny.
Right.
And that goes back towards my idea that, listen, the other thing is, he was a big coke addict at one point.
I heard about that.
Was big into the booze. I
heard about that too.
Think about other. John Candy managed to just die of fatness. Okay,
right.
But Chris Farley and John Belushi, overdoses on drugs.
Right.
It's very self-destructive behavior, but they were murderously funny. In a van down by the river. What was I forget the name of it? Something motivational speaker. You know. Then you find out he lives in a van down by the river. Then of course in the one episode he falls on the table. You know, you have these comedians, these extreme comedians who fit this mold, and they're Artie Lang. If you'll ever watch the Howard Stern show, Artie Lang, another fat comedian, addicted to heroin, engaging in self-destructive behavior, quasi-suicidal, tried to stab himself with a knife and had to take a leave from the Stern show, and I think that's when he eventually went off the Howard Stern show. You know, there's just something about some of these comedians, which whatever it is that makes them so funny is the same mental status that makes them addicted to heroin and suicidal. I don't know. So Robin Williams may have fit that mold.
Right. Yeah, I've been hearing, you know, kind of since he died, you know, you start looking into some stuff and you know, figuring some stuff out.
The other thing is we only know people from the image on TV, and so, you know, think about O.J. Simpson. If you watched O.J. Simpson and some of the specials and things that he did, and even the Naked Gun movies and things like that, O.J. Simpson was like this former quarterback who seemed like a pretty swell guy, right? I mean, I don't think there was anything negative to say about O.J. up until he killed Nicole, right? Allegedly, because of course he was acquitted. But up until that,
he was acquitted. Watch yourself.
Right, that's right. Allegedly, he didn't do it.
Allegedly,
OJ,
yeah, okay.
They don't have internet in OJ's prison cell right now, so hopefully he won't hear this. But there's some bad karma there, by the way. So OJ, you never heard anything bad about him, right? And he seemed like a pretty decent guy. And by all, you know, a lot of people are like, "Hey, I liked him." No, you liked who he played. You liked his public persona. You know, there are nice people that live down the street that are child molesters. There's nice people that live down the street who beat their wives. There are nice women down the street who abuse their children and you know, go out of their way to harm their friends. You don't know them because you just see them out getting their mail and they wave and say hello and you say, "Oh, Bob's a swell neighbor." You know, his wife just looks like she fell down the stairs half the time. And that's what she'll tell you happened. But the point is, you know, you just don't see that because what you see publicly or what you see in that person's, you know, how I am on the radio is that how I'm kind of on the radio the same way I am in real life. I mean, I don't change my persona too much. So I don't really have a shtick here so much as I have just kind of my own moderately crazy normal personality. Bob Durgan was the same way. Bob Durgan was basically there's no difference between Bob Durgan on the radio and off the radio, except that maybe
I heard that about Bob.
Except maybe he swears occasionally off the radio. You know, that's about the only difference. Which, by the way, we're past.
I heard it's a little more than occasionally.
He's past his 1 year, by the way. So Bob could emerge any time. Bob could emerge from hiding and go on the radio anytime here. Anyhow, Bruce Bond, who's got a show now going on Saturday mornings. He's called the Late Afternoon Show on Saturday mornings. He's another guy that, you know, his on-air personality is much harsher. He's a much milder and nicer guy off the air than he is on the air. I think Don Stevens has joined us. Dwayne, is that you, Don?
Hey, what's going on, Carl?
Hey, you're one of our 3 topics tonight, so I'm glad you called in. Now
I saw that, and thanks for tagging me on that, and you said no Don Stevens. I thought you meant no Don Stevens.
No, I meant like no Don Stevens as opposed to Don Stevens. You know, like the okay. Don Stevens, not like God, you know.
Right. You know, I know Bob Durgan was your mentor, but I can't help when I look back at pictures of him and the big goofy cowboy hat. I mean, you never did that.
No cowboy hats.
What was your take on that?
He just wore a cowboy hat. That was just how he dressed. Like I'm telling you, there was no shtick.
You were cool with that. You thought that was all right.
We were afraid of Bob's cowboy hat. Yeah.
I would be afraid of that.
He's had that same He's had like that same cowboy hat for years. In fact, somebody once brought me a fur ball that they thought that, well, it's a long story, but somehow R.J. Harris was making fun of Durgan and coughing up a hairball because he kept finding Durgan's hair on the seat. So one of the listeners made me a hairball to give to R.J. that was a Bob Durgan hairball. Anyhow.
Oh.
Like you have to understand, like on a radio station like that, they have all these legends and all this stuff going on in terms of like everybody knows all this insider information. So I remember one time a cell phone, and I didn't know it was a cell phone immediately, but something started screaming like it sounded about like this. Okay, it was like a chimpanzee calling, screaming monkey type thing, and I'm like, what the heck is this? I have no idea. And the next caller that calls in goes, oh, R.J. Harris must have left his cell phone in the studio. And he's like, because that's the call he uses when his wife calls him. That's the ringtone he has for his wife, the screaming monkeys. You know, like I didn't know that, but of course one of the regular WHP 580 listeners immediately knew that R.J.'s phone must be in the sound booth because that's the call from his wife, you know, because he must have done that on the air one time, showed one of the guys made a joke out of it. And that was just like institutional knowledge amongst the callers, right? That Screaming Monkeys was RJ's wife's phone call. So yeah, that's the kind of legendary stuff that everybody kind of knows, or if you listen long enough. And RJ would always take shots at Durgan in the morning. Durgan never listened to RJ, so he didn't really care to take any shots back because he didn't even know if RJ had made fun of him in the morning or not.
You guys had a regular WKRP in Cincinnati going on over there.
Yeah, exactly.
We should have had a sitcom about it. That was actually probably more entertaining than the actual shit you guys talked about on the air.
One of my favorite WKRP... one of my favorite WKRP... Well, besides Lonnie, my favorite WKRP moments was when Herb Tarlick has got a bottle of scotch with a funnel in it, another bottle of scotch, and the one guy asks, I think Jim or whatever the one guy's name says, "What are you doing, Herb?" He's like, "Oh, I'm aging my scotch." For the sales meeting. Classic.
Classic. I love that show.
Absolutely classic. Yeah, and the disc jockey, the late, the burnout stoner looking dude. Yeah, definitely looks like a real radio station.
Wow.
All right,
but now, we've been going to bigger and better things, haven't we, Carl?
Well, yeah, right. Now we're in the internet.
Internet is a lot more sophisticated than, over the air.
By the way, I posted a picture on Facebook yesterday where I thanked DARPA for creating the internet. And my picture was very simple. It was, as you guys know, because you apparently are on the internet, otherwise you wouldn't be listening to me. On this thing, the internet that DARPA created, is this new thing like you might like or from around the web. And then they have like the one I did, it's just a screenshot off my phone because you're like, there's a picture of Obama and it says, should Obama deport illegal children from the U.S., vote now? Because, okay, I got to click on that because I got to vote yes. Or if I'm a soccer mom, I got to vote no. Florida, here's a little known way to pay off your mortgage. And then there's a guy with a beard who looks like a serial killer, but he has like the body of an Adonis. A Florida man finds an unlikely testosterone booster that builds muscle and burns fat or something, So I just that's why I want to thank DARPA for creating the internet, because now I could choose between and Susie Orman pointing a finger at me, telling me she can fix my mortgage. I could read about Obama, a really muscular dude with a strange beard. There's got to be a woman with a fetish for a guy like that out there somewhere. I just want you to be like really lean and really thin and really good looking, but you have to have a grandpa beard. I can't do it without it. But anyhow, so I was thanking DARPA for that, because without DARPA, I would never have enjoyed those 4 images back to back with one another with those captions. And I will get to it.
And also like specifically for you, Carl, because right. Facebook monitors everything you do, and then they market you. So you must have been cruising a lot of like porn websites or something.
It's all the mal enhancement websites I go to. I'm just trying to get a little bit.
Is that what it is? You're still a young buck. You don't have a problem there yet, I'm sure.
Well, we won't talk about that.
Hey, I got to get going here, Carl.
All right, my friend.
Hey, good night.
Thank you.
I'll stay on.
All right. Yeah, we'll keep Don. We'll keep Don. We don't.
All right.
Get out of here, Dwayne.
Goodbye, Dwayne.
Yeah, goodbye, Dwayne. Anyhow, no. So we were, this Ebola thing. I know you're making fun of me again tonight about the Ebola, and I saw your little.
I'm not making fun of you, Carl. I'm just trying to, bring up some topics for the discussion.
That hoof and mouth disease goes around. Trust me, these kids take it to the daycare center, and then they all get it, and those are some diseases that spread very rapidly and very easily. And if Ebola ever gets as efficient as those diseases, we're all in trouble.
Well, I just wanted to, point out that there are things that are actually, going to happen, and you need to be aware of those.
Yeah, things that are actually... You need to start worrying about things that are actually going to happen. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, stupid as that might be,
You mean illegal Mexican immigrants are not going to carry my house way off its foundation? Really? They're not? I thought that was going to happen because that's kind of what I've learned here in central Pennsylvania. And they're stealing my jobs. They're stealing my jobs.
Well, I know that's your listener base.
Yeah, they're stealing my jobs. Damn it! And actually, people are scared to death of immigrants, which has been true, by the way, of human history for some reason. Because everybody says us versus them mentality. Them immigrants. Well, my grandfather came over to Ellis Island or some stuff like that, but that's different. He was a legal immigrant. Yeah, they loved him. Oh, let me tell you, when he got here, he was loved.
Yeah, that's why they spelled his name incorrectly.
Yeah, exactly.
His original name was Pustokolovich, and they changed it down to,
Putz.
Gretzky.
Yeah.
You shortened it to Gretzky.
Right.
Those Polish names, they're like, 17...
You're right.
17 letters long.
Oh, yeah. Or where I grew up, there was a place called Patton Electric, Patton, right? But it turns out that before it was actually Pattoni, but they shortened it because at the time that the guy opened it, people weren't fond of Italian immigrants, see? Because there too many Italians were coming over and stealing jobs from the Irish. Oh, wait. Yes, the Irish are stealing the jobs from somebody just 30 years before. But my point, so they purposefully Americanized the name because that way they would fool, the average American into actually shopping there. Because, if they saw it had a foreign name on it.
Yeah, I have a funny experience with a similar situation. 100 years ago, I used to be a retail store manager.
Uh-huh.
And I ended up working for this company called Lebo's Western Wear.
Okay.
And I sold cowboy boots and hats. Well, Lebo really was the shortened version of Leibowitz.
Yeah.
they weren't what you would normally expect to see riding around on horses, rounding up cattle. But it's interesting that they sold cowboy hats and cowboy boots, but they had to change their name to Lebo, or else the rednecks wouldn't come to their store and buy the crap from them.
Right. Right. Because that pays.
It's discrimination. Nobody buys cowboy boots from Jews.
There was the ad for what was it, Pace Salsa or something like that? Them cowboy. What? This salsa made in New York City. Yeah. All right. Well, my friend, I'm getting out of here because it is time to tune out. I appreciate your call, and keep the listeners alive on Facebook and keep them hopping, Don. I know you do a good job.
Oh, yeah, right.
Some of them hate you, by the way. I mean, they hate you. You should see the private messages I get about you.
95% of them have me blocked. They're missing out on all the entertainment.
What I'm going to do, I'm going to actually do a night where I just read the Don Stevens PM messages. Like, Don is an atheist and he's going to hell. I hope he rots.
Oh, please do that. That would be so much fun. I really wish you'd do that.
I can paraphrase him. I mean, Don's an ass. What is up with this guy? Is he delusional?
I'm glad I'm not Robin Williams because I'd probably be hanging myself.
Yeah, you would be hanging yourself because with a little depression. But, conversely, you're not that funny, so I would never mistake you for Robin Williams. Actually, I
laugh at the numbnuts. Your listeners.
Some of my listeners don't even have TV, so I'm sure they're not even sure who Robin Williams was. More. They probably were. I actually believe this. I bet you I could find at least one of my listeners who will tell you that whatever church he went to when Robin Williams was on Mork and Mindy, that they weren't allowed to watch it because it was somehow satanic. Because Jonathan Winters was aging in reverse, and that was, that's just proof of Satanism.
Oh my God, that's good humor. Well, I'm looking forward to that program.
Yeah, we could do that. Actually, we could do a call-a-thon, and maybe we'll do this. So, listeners, I want you to save up your anecdote. You can call in, or we could do like a Don Stevens, "This Is Your Life" kind of deal. Like people just call in and bitch about you, and
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah. I would love that.
Yeah, we can do that, like the roast of Dawn. Roast Dawn.
That'll be fun, yeah.
All right, my friend, I'm out of here.
Adios.
Adioso, amigos. You've been listening to Carl Rominger here on Rominger Radio. Of course, if you happen to be listening to this great hour of radio, then you must be desperate for entertainment. I recommend you do, in fact, buy a TV at this point in your life or subscribe to Netflix. I will be back on Sunday at 8 p.m. We're still on summer hours. Some are here, some are not. And I will be here Sunday at 8 p.m. to answer your questions and describe for you what really will happen when you do catch the big Ebola. All right, see you later, guys. Take care. God bless.